Welcome to Talkin' with Dave. Here's Dave.
Hey, how we doing out there? I hope you are doing well. I am top shelf myself and ready to go. It's been crazy lately, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I've got it's not so much of a secret if you've known me over the years. I've always kidded about starting my own cult. I have aspirations to be a cult leader, I guess you could say. I never thought it was that difficult because the things that people can be talked into and follow these charismatic leaders. I'm thinking maybe I was flattering myself, but I could do that. I'm a sales guy, and it's become more serious than I intended. Not my desire to be a cult leader, but as I was preparing for this, it's I gotta tell you, it hit home in a couple of ways, and I'll let that play out over the course of the next hour or so. Cults, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. There's not a cult registry. There's not you don't apply to start a cult and go to the courthouse and get your license and all that kind of stuff. There are over 1,000 known cults in the United States. Can you believe that? 1,000. That's the ones that they know about. And, cults being illegal, that can be depending on what they're doing. Their activities are illegal. It's not illegal to be in a cult. It just depends on the activities. But I always thought, what kind of cult would I start? And I finally zoned in on it. We're not going to stockpile weapons. We're not going to, make you drink the Kool-Aid. But I thought, what can it be? And you'll see in the different things we talk about, let's stockpile bacon. Maybe some biscuits, but bacon. And instead of Kool-Aid, sweet tea, being from the South. And I'll call my cult the BACON Brotherhood. Sisters welcome. Well, sisters welcome. It's just the alliteration. BACON Brotherhood. If somebody posed that to me, you got my attention. Okay, tell me more, please. Cults are serious, though. And I want to talk through a few things. I want to talk about what is it? What's a cult? How's a cult different than a religion? Is there a checklist? Okay, it's got to be these 5 things. Check, 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 check. And then when it gets serious you think, who in the world would join these? That's when it hit home for me. I want to go over the profile of people that they approach and they pull in. It's going to seem eerily familiar, and where I want to come full circle on this is whether you are the prey for a cult or it's people that you know, there is a need there. And we can, if we know what to look for, I'll give you finally the steps to make sure that these people feel a part of something so they don't fall prey to bad influence, whether it's a cult or someone wanting to take advantage of them. So that's how it got a little more serious than I intended. I'll be 100% transparent here. I'm re-recording this. I don't feel like I did a good job the first time. I already had it in the can, ready to go. I didn't cover the seriousness of it and how you can apply what you learn here, what I learned here, to your life and those people around you. So just to talk about some of the cults, I remember growing up, I was in the South, and you can talk about different cults and where they are, but I would hear on the news like Heaven's Gate. Remember that one? That's the one where the Hale-Bopp comet comes through, and they believed if they killed themselves at a certain time, they could become extraterrestrials. It's a whole UFO-based thing. That's the one. It was in 97. 39 people followed this guy. And that's the one where they got in their bunks, put on brand new shoes, no treads, had ever touched the ground, and they killed themselves with I can't remember if that was cyanide or some sort of elixir, but That did the trick. Heaven's Gate. When I moved to San Diego or Solana Beach, I found out that house was just, I don't know, less than 10 miles away. Blew my mind. But that's a very famous one. The Manson family. Helter Skelter. I was young when that came out. Oh, that scared me. That was scarier than any scary movie, and it was true. Just to see somebody writing stuff on blood on the wall, and that kept going. They still have members of the family that are either in jail or up for parole. I heard something the other day. And the fact that Charles Manson got out of jail before he passed away blows my mind. But that's another one. That started in the late 60s. A bunch of hippies. Hippie cult. Not Hippie Death Cult. That's a great band. Then the People's Temple. That's the one down in Jonestown. Reverend Jim Jones. That's a very famous one. Interesting on this one. Well, that was in 1970, late 70s. And over 900 people died. Just a mass suicide. That's where the whole Kool-Aid, drinking the Kool-Aid. I believe it was cyanide-laced punch. But drinking the Kool-Aid. I had a connection with that because in the 80s, I remember I started a position with a company. Me and another gentleman did at the same time. And he was a little bit older than me. He was 40, and I was in my 30s, I guess. He was retired military, and his job in the Navy was filmmaking. He was a filmmaker. And he was the first group of people at the Jonestown Massacre with a camera. And any documentary footage you see, he shot it. He said, they didn't let us use most of it. Because imagine you've got all these people in tropical climate who are dead, and they start to swell. And he told me some pretty graphic stuff about that. But that's all these people, 900 people of all ages, believed this man and went down to this compound. And I dare think if it was a senator went down and they couldn't let him go back and report what happened and they killed him, I think that's what triggered all of that, or it would have gone on a lot longer. Scientology may be one of the most famous ones now that is going on. Very high profile with some of the stars. And then Leah Remini, who got out and tried to take them down. But, I mean, I don't think they have the scope and the reach that they did, but I was down in Inland Empire in California. That's where they have their campuses and their schools and churches and whatever they do there. But the Church of Scientology. I saw a documentary on several cults. I've always been fascinated with it. I don't know why. My wife loves crime. I'm cults. I kind of student of human nature. And so that Rajneesh movement, it's this gentleman who is a self-proclaimed prophet, and I believe that was in the mid 80s. He comes out, and they're following him, and they're the ones that they bought all this property, and people would donate. We'll talk about that in a bit, but bought all this property, and then a town close by started becoming familiar with what they do, and they poisoned the water supply of that town, and they started doing some crazy things. So when somebody starts to interfere with what's going on in their lifestyle and threatening their secrecy or whatever, that's when it gets crazy. That's when and there's several others. The 12 tribes, a lot of them will have Christian fundamentalist beliefs and then add to it, which turns it into a cult. Then there's several. The Branch Davidians, that one that we all know, that ended in a fiery crash. But David Koresh, who was, a charismatic prophet, who, he was a preacher, and a lot of them start that way. And then the Love has one cult. Some of these, they had a character called the Mother God, who was a incarnation of a deity. And some of it just gets, so I don't want to talk too much about it because it just sounds like I don't want to degrade the people who join these cults by talking about how crazy these cults are. But some of these cults are crazy. But they were, she was this Amy Carlson, supposedly 19 billion years old, and she was a reincarnation of Jesus Christ. And They found her mummified body, after her death, had Christmas lights around it. And I'm pointing these out to just talk about how far-fetched some of these things are. And you think, how could anybody get involved in this? How do you do it? Well, we're going to talk about that, how you do. But there are some things that has to be true, technically, and for it to be a cult, an authoritarian leader, the figurehead, a key leader. And a lot of times it's about them, or a lot of times it's their message about something else, but they are the focus. Jim Jones is a perfect example. Very charismatic, godlike figure. He would talk. I remember the movie about him, but I also remember some of the documentaries where people would talk. He had a good speaking voice, but he would also just talk to the compound from time to time. His voice was very prevalent, and he was always there. But they have an authoritarian leader. Also, most of them, if not all of them, have elitist beliefs. And what I mean by that is, by joining this or being a part of this community, you're going to either have a step up, or you're going to be better off, or you're going to be better than others. Heaven's Gate, for example, they were going to transcend to a higher place, extraterrestrial type situation. And all they had to do was kill themselves and wear nice new tennis shoes. So that elitist or exclusive beliefs, meaning, hey, we're going to be the only ones who survive this. And then there's always some sort of isolation or control for cults. You got to have that leader. You got to have elitist or exclusive beliefs, and then they have to have control over you. And a lot of times they obtain this by isolation. That Rajneesh movement, it's communal living. They bought property out in the country, and to be a part of it, you had to live there. That's a great example of how they isolate you. And then they always have some sort of manipulation or to coerce you, maybe do things you don't necessarily want to at first, but they manipulate. They have techniques for doing that. And it's threats, and I'll talk to their tactics in a minute, but they want to get your money, or they want to get more recruits, and they can manipulate you through emotion. It's either things they're going to do to you or your family, or things that will happen if they don't do certain things, or just guilt trips. If they need money, they always have those tactics. And then the exploitation. Cults will exploit their members in any way they can, and often it's financially, it's always emotionally, and many times it's sexually. You get back to where that starts. And I'm not doing a psychological profile on these cult leaders. I will talk about cult members a bit, but Scientology, that exploitation, the shame, and you can buy yourself out of certain situations, and a lot of the things. How do these celebrities get away with this or not have to do that? Or, well, they've got money, and it's good advertisement for the cult. So there's exploitation there. So real quick, to be a cult, I'll do it again to go back through. You've got to have some sort of authority as far as leadership, exclusive or elitist beliefs, or isolation or control tactics, manipulation. They have techniques to manipulate, and then they'll exploit you for what you can give, whether it's money, sex, time, whatever that would be. And then a lot of times in talking about cults, people will talk about, well, that sounds like a religion. That's not a cult, it's a religion. There's a big difference in the two. And there's some talk inside of the religious communities around certain religions. They dismiss them as cults. Some of that, but it's got to have those certain qualifications to be a cult. And I'm going to go through a few more serious things, then I'm going to get into how this applies to you. Because you may be thinking, Dave, I'm not joining a cult. I don't know anybody joining a cult. Why are we doing this? I'll bring it home for you in a minute. Differences between a cult and a religion a lot of time is around the leadership structure, where cults are a single person or a very small group. Religions are vast and usually have established structure. For example, the Catholic Church, the Pope is the leader of the church, but the Pope is not the one to be worshipped. Now, I know they have, and I'm not picking on Catholics, they pray to saints. They have different things about their religion. There is an elaborate structure behind it, and it's decentralized. Where cults, it's all right here around one leader or a very small group. Religions, you've got a lot more freedom. You can come and go as you please. Where cults, not so much. A lot of them, they want to isolate you. That you need to live here. You need to do these things. You need to be under these dictates to stay a member. And I realize some religions are stricter than others. I think the main thing is the degree of control a cult has versus a religion. And what ties to that a bit is, religions, again, the freedom, but they'll also, you can disagree. I'm Baptist. A lot of times, if you don't understand something, or you'll have different people. I remember adults arguing back and forth about what some verse or scripture meant, and you can have some dissent. You can have people that disagree with the preacher. Not in cults. You can't you can't agree to disagree in a cult. Authoritarian. And then, as far as recruiting, there's a big difference in religions and cults. Mainstream religions, they're open and they invite people, and it's voluntary, and they'll visit, and a lot of times it's word of mouth. If you're having same way with cults in that. However, cults will manipulate the tactics, and I'll talk to their tactics in a second. Where I've been visited because we move a lot. I've been visited by people at a church, and they want to invite us, and here's the deal, and you can be there. And whereas a cult is a lot more aggressive with their recruitment tactics. Then the last one is just your impact on you from a personal well-being standpoint. Most religions, it's about spiritual things and moral things and guidelines for life to be happier and full of joy and things like that. And I am paraphrasing like a crazy man. And it's a lot more technical than that. Whereas cults, they do a lot more psychological harm, and they'll exploit you more. You'll get a guilt trip from just about all churches to tithe. It's a lot more aggressive. And the impact on a person's well-being is to the point where you have no autonomy. You're part of this group, and that is your new identity. So just a few things around difference in religions and cults, because I know, a lot of people, especially those who are anti-religion, they'll throw it in there. So this is the part, and I want to go over a few characteristics that would be considered in a person that would be considered a target for a cult, or people that are susceptible to cults. I'm also going to tie it to these people there's a void in their life, and they're looking to fill it. So I'm going to talk to the 5 characteristics of people who are searching and need something, looking for something. There's a hole in their life that they're trying to fill. And then I'll talk to how cults sees these needs and it pulls them in. You're probably thinking, there's no way. People have got to be crazy to do this. Well, it's not just cults. It's bad decisions. It's getting with bad groups, cult or not. So be thinking about that when I talk to each one of these traits. I'll prompt you for sure. But the first one is emotional vulnerability. People they're having a tough time right now. They're in turmoil. Maybe it's horrible grief they're going through. They're terribly lonely, which leads to depression. And we've talked to a lot of these conditions. Or maybe it's just some really significant changes in their life. They're vulnerable right now. And cults are very good at offering comfort. I'll say love bombing several times, but they can come in and sense what's going on. If they know a bit about your background, they know how to take advantage of that. And if you're emotionally vulnerable, they can appeal to those emotions. Somebody grieving of a loved one, they might be open, especially if they don't have a good social network. They may be open to that, and they get the comfort first, and then they start to trust a little bit, and before long it's gone further than that. But emotional vulnerability is a big one. Then this is so sad, but a lack of critical thinking skills. Individuals who struggle to question things. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. A lot of people don't have that, and they can be more inclined to accept, oh, that sounds great, rather than, dig in a little deeper, peel that onion back a little bit. And it makes, these people are especially susceptible because cults, they discourage independent thinking. It's part of the group. You don't have to worry about that. No, we all do this together. If you're lonely or upset, emotionally vulnerable because some of these, now not only do you not have to make all these tough decisions, you can come hang with us. And they fill all of those gaps and make it easier. Especially if you have a very charismatic leader. One of the first things they do is get you in front of them, and it's like, oh, now maybe someone who hasn't had a strong leader in their life, or if it's a man, maybe they have a father figure, something like that. They're especially vulnerable to that. And then there's others who they're good critical thinkers. Yeah. They may not even be that emotionally distraught, but they want to be a part of something greater than themselves. And you hear this a lot with philanthropy and all this stuff, but many people join cults because of a deeper sense of purpose. You follow some of these documentaries, and some of the people in the leadership of a cult are, my goodness, they were in corporate jobs. They were very successful. Also had a lot of money, which made them desirable, but also giving them a certain position of power, or even a special nuanced knowledge. Or with Heaven's Gate, you're going to be part of an elite extraterrestrial group. That's a desire for greater meaning and purpose. And then a lot of it is just low self-esteem. People with low self-esteem, sometimes it's not as obvious. They may not be a loner. They may not be isolated. They might not be all these things. A lot of times they are. But it could be that person who they just never can get a break. And no one ever told them that they're special or they're good at something. Cults prey on this. Somebody with low self-esteem, you start patting them on the back or telling them they're good or they're pretty or they're this or they're that. Ooh, now I feel better. Think about it. Or if they've had previous abuse in some way, now they can be a part of something that's, they're always searching. They're looking for some relief or some isolation or some sanctuary or something. Those are the 5 characteristics. So I want to go back and bring this home a little bit more. And you can make it very personal to you if you want, but I want you to think about you and the people you know. I just realized what made this very personal to me in the last couple of weeks. I found out a couple of my one friend and one relative that have really been struggling in dealing with something. I had no idea. And so let's go back through this, and you think about yourself or friends or family or an acquaintances who's emotionally vulnerable right now. They're going through a big life change. Maybe they've had a death in their family. Okay, are they going to run off and join a cult? I would say the chances are, I'll say minimal. It could happen. But they are definitely a target for manipulation. Any of your friends that they just go along with the group, they never question anything. They just go, whatever the group decides, that's fine. Now, I'm not talking about going out to eat, because a lot of people do that just to go, I'm hungry. I'll go wherever you want. That's could be manipulated. But a lack of critical thinking. Who of your friends or your family may have lack of critical thinking skills to where it is too good to be true? Or, they fall for some of the gimmicks. They fall for a sales pitch or an infomercial. That shows a lack of critical thinking skills. Now, I mean, if I don't have an Amazon package show up at the house, the driver knocks on the door, wanting to make sure we're okay. So I'm not necessarily talking about that, but somebody that get rich quick scheme, or attaining a higher level of, so they watch that infomercial. If they just take these pills and this cream and wear these shoes, you're gonna, it's gonna answer all your problems. That's a lack of critical thinking. Do you have any friends or family that's that? Maybe you have those, and I can think of a couple of people that higher purpose. I know people who have joined different groups, and I don't want to demean these groups at all, but it started out with yoga, and then it went to yoga and meditation, and next thing you know, they questioned everything that came along before, but they were manipulated. Nothing wrong with yoga or meditation, but they've been manipulated because this action was such a source of sanctuary or a refuge for them, because they had other stuff going on and they were looking to get away from that. And then low self-esteem. I think we all know people with low self-esteem. From time to time, we have low self-esteem. That's, I don't think you'll have to, and it's insecurity too. There's a lot of insecurity out there that can be manipulated. And then, God forbid, we know people who have been through some type of abuse in the past. I guarantee you it's more prevalent than you think. Physical abuse, mental abuse, maybe some sort of trauma happened, just jolted their life, and they've not been quite the same since. People in your life, if you take time to think about it, it's almost purple car. Unfortunately, it's not a good purple car. As you go through and you learn more about people, you hear these things. Some of the people that seem the most confident, most charismatic in your life, they're scared to death, and they've got other things. Even in sales, people love to buy, but they don't want to be sold. I'm a sales guy. I am the biggest pushover. I'm sold so easily outside of, just my personal situation. Man, that sounds great. Yeah, I'll take it. Oh, yeah, just the cases and cases of Girl Scout cookies I bought in the past. And then they come along, hey, we got Venmo. I don't have any cash. Well, no problem. We got Venmo. Yeah, you know who you are. You're probably not listening to this, but so now we know what cults are. We know who they're targeting, or who are susceptible to joining a cult or being manipulated by a group. And this can be cults, or just a group of bad people who are trying to manipulate and take your money, your time, sexual reasons, all of this. It doesn't have to be a full-blown cult. They look for the people that we just talked about. So how do they get membership? When you hear some of these outlandish things that they either believe or say or require, who in their right mind falls for this? Well, I told you the profile. Now here's the techniques that cults use, and I'll share 5. The first one I mentioned earlier, love bombing. They overwhelm potential new members with attention and praise and affection and pats on the back, and they make them feel unique, and then their values are so accepted by this group. This is your home, and it's so effective because a lot of people, they're lonely. They're lonely. We talked about the emotional, vulnerable people out there. They're seeking something, friendship, social status, and love bombing is just overwhelming. First of all, because you haven't had that before. That's missing in your life. Now, oh, that feels good. I haven't had a hug like that, and they really mean it. And this is the leader knows my name. They manufacture all of that. And that, the more they love bomb you, it's mostly at the first, and they'll dabble in it whenever they need to. But you feel comfortable, but before long, you want more of it. And then you want to be loyal to the group because they have filled this need that you have. And just think about your friends. It's someone who's had a bad breakup, someone who just, I don't know, maybe something at work, or they just got fired or something, to be pulled in to where you are part of the group now. They shower you with all this attention and affection. If you're funny, they laugh at your jokes. Whatever. They hit you with all the things that have missed. And then another tactic. So they've love bombed you. Now the isolation comes in. Cults are real good at cutting you off from outside influences. A lot of times it's family, it's friends, it's social norms. And it can be with the internet and accessibility like that. Sometimes it's not a physical isolation, but many times it is. They have a compound, or they have somewhere where you go. Maybe you don't live there, but you go there regularly, like it would be a church or something like that. And that's very effective because you're not listening to any other viewpoints. And after a while, if you're not a critical thinker and you're getting love bombed, and this is so nice, I love it here, you don't want to go anywhere else. And you don't have your friends and family, and maybe family's part of the problem. So they're not going to let them talk to you. Plus, you don't like your family. All these things work together. It's the Branch Davidians. They had their compound isolated from the world. I think Dave Koresh was the only one who could contact anybody outside. And that way, anything that happened, they didn't hear it. They didn't know what normal was. This is the new normal, and they liked it. So isolation is a key one. They major in the third one, which is either fear or guilt. And then that manipulation around, this, you're isolated. So the group is going to, getting away from that group or going back to where you were, it could be a spiritual thing. You could be spiritual damnation or just social rejection. Okay, you're going to go back to being that isolated, lonely person that you were before here. We'll take all the love away. And that's part of the fear. But then the guilt is, after all we've done for you, you're part of our family. And they guilt you in to that, going back on the loyalty that you've grown. I mean, we are your family now. Your old family, your friends, they paid no attention to you, and we have loved you unconditionally. So fear and guilt, that is a huge tactic. And then once you get there for a while, it's that once you're isolated and you're love bombed, that whole us versus them mentality, that's where, we've got it right. Everybody else has got it wrong. And you see this in all the cults. And even, Scientology, they don't, they have some degrees where you're on campus, but these people roam free. But there is that center, and that center is, I'm one of the chosen ones. It's an us versus them mentality, and that tactic, it instills loyalty, and then you want to be with that. If you're one of the group that's going to do well, you want to be with that group more. And then after a while, they don't have to monitor your loyalty or your gratefulness. Charles Manson, he convinced his followers that they were the chosen few. He didn't have that many. And there was, I think he also said there's going to be a race war. And the only people that are going to get through it are the ones that are devoted to him. And these people were so needy. If you look at it, they were now they belonged. And he called his group, his followers, the family. And then the one of the other, they use a lot of tactics. The last one I'll talk about is that escalation of the commitment. So we've got you. We've loved bombed you. We've isolated you. We're giving, we've shown you the way. That whole us versus them thing. Now, let's gradually increase what it takes to stay here. The commitment as far as time or money or sex or all the different things. Now, you're in. This is part of it. And they gradually escalate what that's going to take. Something small at first. And then as you're part of the group, it increases. It may be that you have to recruit more people. Like what? There are some that they consider it a personal development. Yeah, you get more members, or in order to, once you love it so much, there's requirements to get to stay. And I heard a documentary not long ago about this lady. She's in her 40s now, but her grandfather started one of the cults, and it's still going on today. But she got out, but several times they threatened to kick her out, and she would do things to get to stay. So that's how, I'll say brainwashed some of these people are, and it's so devastating. And some people say, well, what, if they're not killing people or if they're not breaking laws, maybe they believe, like a lot of people will call Amish or Mennonites, a cult. No, that's not a cult. They don't meet all of those 5 things, but they do a lot of it. The isolation, well, there's certain things they don't do outside of their group, and there's certain things we can't do when we're around them, but they move, they still have some autonomy within that. But what happens with cults, I think the reasons it's bad are pretty obvious, but you have no autonomy. You're part of a group. It's group think. And it's really not group think. It's group do based on what the leaders think. You totally lose that. And a lot of people who've been in cults and get out, that is the hardest thing for them to get used to again. Making decisions on their own, going their own way, doing what they think's right. And they start so small, but eventually you have no identity. And that psychological and emotional manipulation, it's hard to adjust back after that, because it's easy. I'm provided for. I don't have to make any decisions. I just follow the crowd. Look at those personality types that they target. And it's so harmful because that constant manipulation destroys your self-esteem. You don't have any. The group has self-esteem. You have none, because it's all about the group. That's why they don't leave. And the anxiety, and a lot of time people who get out, they go back. They go back because it's comfortable to them. I didn't have to worry about all that. I didn't have to worry about my bills or my debt or anything like that. I just give all my money to them and they take care of it. Whew. And just the lack of social skills, they don't let you talk to people outside to any major degree. I mean, a lot of people still have jobs and all this, but They set it up to where they police their own. And you don't confide in anybody because they'll tell on you. And once they tell on you, and so see, there's no trust among each other, which leads to more isolation. So you just do what you're supposed to do. That social interaction is very different. And there's so many people who have been in cults, their kids have been in cults, a family member has been in cults, and it absolutely ruined them financially. I mean, emotionally, of course, and many times physically, but financially has destroyed them, because a lot of them will sign deeds or titles over to the cult or to members of the cult. So they've given up everything to attain a certain status. And then the physical and mental health risks, it's over the top. Recovering that. A lot of times it's just the shame. So I want to tie it together now with, I'm talking about cults, but I'm also talking about, and even broader and I think more relevant to our everyday lives, are these people who have the traits that would be susceptible to a cult. All right, let's take the word cult out and put in manipulation. These people that are susceptible to manipulation or a downward spiral or making poor decisions, that they have those traits that a cult would prey on. And when you know these people, even if you don't know these people, here are things to do for the people you care about, your acquaintances, or just another person. This will help with the cult problem, but it also will help you be a better person and those around you. The first thing is encourage critical thinking. Cults thrive on people who don't have critical thinking. Their recruitment, they love this, and they have questions they can ask that will ascertain if you're a critical thinker or not. They can look at when your eyes light up at a certain thing. By encouraging critical thinking, get people in the habit of asking questions. Ask questions. Yeah, there's an old drill, ask 3 questions to everything. Ask questions about the question. Because one more you ask questions, even if you're not a critical thinker, it's going to make others think that you are. And a lie hates questions. A lie hates questions. So, teach skepticism. I remember when I was young, it used to bother me. My parents, I would have this great idea. I don't know about that. And, that could be negative at times, but they had critical thinking. Skepticism toward extreme ideas, that's crucial. Now, I'm not saying be so conservative you don't try new things. There's a big difference in that. But encourage people to be critical thinkers. Discuss things. Talk to people. Find out what they think about it. Ask them questions. If you hear something on TV or some outlandish things, ask them what they think about that. And see what they say, because you may discover, they're susceptible to this. A second thing for people you care about, maintain open communication. Manipulation will cut them off. You get it till they get your name on the dotted line, then you're committed. Vulnerabilities, different, those people who are easily manipulated. If you have open lines of communication, they're going to talk to you about it. If they're going to be more critical thinking, they may bring it up to you. You reach out to them. If someone is usually a certain way, and then you notice they're not, ask them, hey, how you doing? You can be non-threatening. You're usually always smiling and got a pleasant look on your face. Is there something wrong? Your forehead's all wrinkled up. You worried about something? Or is that something I can do if you hadn't heard it from somebody in a while? Set that coffee appointment. Hey, let's go get a cup of coffee. I'll buy you. Let's go have a piece of pie and I'll buy the pie. Shout out to Kathleen. But call them on it. Everything okay? You doing all right? Hadn't heard from them in a while. I noticed you weren't there the other night. You're always there. Everything okay? Maintain open communication, because once you do that, they can tell you. Hopefully they'll reach out. But if not, get that contact point. Also, tactics that people use for manipulation, whether it's a cult or not, a lot of people will be manipulated without knowing it because manipulators make it their idea. You've always heard that. The best way to get somebody to do what you want is make them think it's their idea. You can talk to cults, but talk to manipulation. There's so much manipulation in politics right now. A lot of it's just through blatant lying. A lot of it, though, one way that I think people are manipulating, it's a good example, is, when they want to pass a bill, they'll name it like, caring for puppies and babies, and, they'll name it something like that. You want to care for puppies and babies, don't you? And then you read the fine print, and it's, they're going to kill all the puppies and babies, but they named it something that sounds good. Educate people on these things. Read it. Dig in. The critical skills. Keep those communication lines open, but also educate people on tactics of those who want to manipulate other people. In everything I talk about almost is have a strong social group. You can be your circle, people you trust. They're not going to, I can promise you. So they may be manipulated into a bad decision, but there's nobody in my circle going to join a cult. There's no way, unless we start a cult ourselves, the BACON Brotherhood. Because we have such a strong connection. And, you got your small circle, then your bigger circle, and then your whole group. I would like to think it would devastate me if I found out that someone fell prey to bad manipulation. But that strong social network and connections to where if you don't hear from somebody in a while, well, you're going to send a text or make a phone call or something to keep that. And for example, we're going to go back, my wife and I are going to go back to our old neighborhood here in a couple of weeks, and I'm just going to put out a group text saying, we're going to be in town. You guys want to have lunch or brunch or something? Within 2 days, there'll be 10 or 15 people that have commented on that, or I can't, and then the stream will turn into memories. We may not have talked in months, but that will bring it right back. And so that social connection, it doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be every week. The people that are important to you. And then a lot of times, that's one good thing about social media or looking through pictures. You can see somebody I hadn't talked to them in a while. My friend Liz, I text her all the time, but I haven't seen her in probably 6 months. But I reach out to her and she reaches out to me. When something reminds you of somebody, text them, call them, do something to keep that social connection. But without that person may be isolated. You may be the only person that thought about them and reached out to them. And that might have been the spark that kept them from a bad decision or a dark place. You have no idea what people are going through. Keep in touch with people you care about and encourage all of your people to do the same. And hopefully these circles will overlap to the point to where it's not as threatening. And then the last one, we have to become more emotionally resilient. I've got a podcast coming up that's going to upset a lot of people because it sounds like I'm not pro-emotional health. It's not that at all. Emotional resilience is so important because when we're emotionally vulnerable, we make bad choices. Somebody comes along at the right time. How many times have you seen, a couple break up and the next thing you know, one of them is dating somebody you're thinking, oh my goodness, why in the world? They were emotionally vulnerable and they made bad choices and now they're doing things they wouldn't. Now they're part of a group there, a whole different social group. It's because they're emotionally vulnerable. How many times do we make purchases based on when we're emotionally vulnerable? How many times have I eaten a whole tray of Cinnabons when I was emotionally vulnerable? It ain't funny. That's what I'm talking about. Teach emotional resilience. Toughen up. Gain control of your emotions. It's, adopt some healthy coping mechanisms. A lot of times people aren't going to reach out to you for every little thing because that's tough on everybody. We've got to get tougher as people, and more to come on that. But that's one thing we have to do to protect ourselves against manipulation. So by promoting critical thinking and staying connected and being tougher emotionally, we can have a defense against cults, against manipulation, against groupthink. We need to be strong individuals because strong individuals make strong groups. And there are times when the weakest among us is the strongest under certain situations. I've got friends that I don't know. You all have your types. You got the leaders. You got the funny ones. You got the crazy ones. You different things at different times. Anybody that's a part of your social group, understand what they bring to the table, and tell them. Lift people up, and the gift that keeps on giving. I talked about that. Everyone you know is valuable. Make sure they know it. Make sure that they know you need them. And they'll be less susceptible to manipulation. The extreme would be a cult. But the way I bring this to everybody, I hope people have come to your mind over the last 45 minutes that you'll reach out to for a text. Like, how's it going? I saw this and I thought of you. Or, we're going over here. Hey, you want to go? You want to go with us? We haven't got together in a while. Let's do that. Or the one-on-one stuff. But reach out to people. Let them know they belong. And they're less likely to join a cult or be manipulated or do things. We've all been emotionally vulnerable. We probably will be again. But now we know the antidote to manipulation and cults. I hope this has been helpful. It took on a life of its own when I was doing my research. I thought of people in my life that were susceptible to it. And then you think, that's extreme. Well, a cult may be extreme, but manipulation is in our face every day. Thanks for joining. I appreciate your time more than you know. This is it's a serious topic, and I'm usually not this serious, and I'll fix that in the next few, I promise. But thanks for supporting me. Reach out to David at otalks.com or Dave at otalks.com. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm on all of that stuff. Reach out at otalks.com. See what's going on. I'm going to start more public appearances again, and maybe I'll be around you. Got all the stuff behind me that I don't sell, but you can buy it at otalks.com. Thanks for the support, but most of all, thanks for O-Talking with Dave, and giddy up.
Hello there. Are you out of work or looking for a new career? Do you feel like you have a lot of potential and just haven't hit your stride? We know just how you feel, and we are here to help. We are Cult Leader University, and we have the curriculum for you. Clue offers options to fit your schedule. Clue has entry-level courses in stockpiling, Kool-Aid making, catchy sing-alongs, and entry-level recruiting techniques. Once you've mastered these, you can move on to advanced courses in pontificating, standing like a guru, mastering the nostril flare, and holding an intimidating stare. Enroll at Clue, and if you pay for a full year in advance, Clue will help you develop your mantra, give you ideas for clothing requirements, and equip you with original handshakes, utterings, or code names. Don't wander around in anonymity. Enroll in Clue and set your own rules. At Cult Leader University, we can't imagine what you're capable of, but we know it's impressive. Cult Leader University can change your life, and the lives of anyone unfortunate enough to be around you. Remember, if you don't have a clue, we are the school for you.